Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Gothic is a classic 2001 RPG developed by a studio called Piranha Bytes from Germany.
Good luck and take care!
Unfortunately, this studio recently had to close down after 20 plus years of making RPGs, and I made a video about their entire history that you can check out. Despite this, there is a full-blown remake for Gothic that's just around the corner. THQ Nordic, the publisher and the owner of this IP, hired another studio to make the remake. That studio is called Alchema Interactive, and these guys seem very passionate about the remake. They've been taking all of the feedback very seriously ever since the first playable teaser way back in 2019. The second demo for the remake had its issues for sure, but it was way better compared to that playable teaser, and it seems like the game is on the right track. By the way, they updated the new demo and fixed some sluggishness within the control scheme after a lot of people left their feedback. So yeah, I have high hopes for the remake, but we obviously have to wait and see if it's going to be any good.
Sort of.
So I thought now is a great time to revisit the original game and finally make a video about it.
I wouldn't have expected anything else from you.
It's no secret that I'm a huge fan of Gothic games. I made God knows how many videos about these RPGs. But I never made a dedicated video about the first Gothic game, believe it or not, and it's been years since I last completed a playthrough. Up to the point where I forgot a lot of things about it. Getting to experience the game again before the remake drops was a top priority for me because I plan to cover the remake as well, as you probably expected. If you plan to check out the remake but you never played the original, this video should be very helpful. It should help you understand why people love the original game, all of its strengths and weaknesses, and give you an idea what to expect from the remake.
You'll be sorry for that. We'll meet again.
Assuming the remake turns out to be a good game in general, and I certainly hope it will be. Right, now let's talk about Gothic.
Welcome to the colony.
This playthrough of the game was done on Switch, mostly because I ended up playing it a lot while just taking a break from editing videos and just chilling in my living room. It's still kinda crazy to think that you can play this game on a portable device, because it was always a PC exclusive game with weird keyboard and mouse controls. So being able to use a controller for it and play it on the go is very interesting to me. It's not like you can't use the controller on Steam with some great community layouts, but it won't be as good as native Switch control scheme. We still didn't get the same controller support and all other quality of life updates for the PC version, even though THQ promised these features, which is a bit disappointing. Then again, if you want to get the authentic gameplay experience of Gothic 1, for whatever reason, you might just play it with mouse and keyboard. Mostly with the keyboard actually, because you don't even need to use the mouse. But no matter how you decide to play this game, the controls will take a while to get used to say the least. Gothic Trilogy is also coming out on Xbox and PlayStation in 2026, and if I would have to assume, it will probably come out before the remake. Besides the controller support, the whole UI had a nice little facelift on the Switch, and it's much more convenient now compared to the OG PC version. Then again, you can grab some mods on the PC, which will do the same thing. The Switch version is definitely not perfect. I had a lot of crashes during my 40 hours playthrough, which happened randomly, and there are some slowdowns in certain areas where the game noticeably starts dropping frames. But for the most part, the game still runs in 60 FPS, which is great, and I think Switch 2 probably runs the game even better, possibly in locked 60 FPS mode. None of those issues ruined my experience with the game, and if you have a Switch, I would actually recommend playing it like this.
Shit! Run as fast as you can!
If not, just stick with the PC version and you'll be just fine. You will need to grab a couple of mods from the Steam Workshop in order for this game to work with no issues on Windows 11, so keep that in mind. And you can always go wild with the PC version if you're willing to install some great mods, but I recommend sticking with the vanilla experience, at least for your first playthrough. There are a lot of aspects of this game that aged really well, but the graphics are not one of them. This game really shows its age with blocky and blurry textures, character models, and pretty much everything else. Despite that, Gothic still manages to create an amazing atmosphere. Even though the graphical fidelity is very low, the art direction of the game still holds up. Exploring the world map and seeing all of these different places is still a very fun experience. Gothic has a distinctive artistic style, everything is dark, muddy and gloomy. Still though, there are plenty of different looking and unique places to see, and I wouldn't say the game lacks visual variety. All 3 camps in the game look very different, and this is where you're going to spend a lot of your time, especially in the early game. A lot of these locations in the game are deeply carved into my memory, like the forest for example. The forest in Gothic will probably make you more scared than most horror games nowadays. But that's not because of the graphics that much, it's more about how dangerous the world feels in the beginning. Then we have the day and night cycle, which heavily affects the overall look of the game. The atmosphere is so different during the night, and once again, not only because of the visuals. Dark medieval fantasy shines through the outdated visuals, and you won't believe how immersive this game is until you try it out for yourself. This game is such a great reminder that great visuals mean nothing if everything else is not clicking. This goes beyond just visuals of course, immersion is much more than that. The music, the setting, story, NPC behavior and the gameplay in general all contribute to creating an immersive experience that Gothic is beloved for. So it becomes very easy to forget the outdated nature of the visuals when that's the case. I care about the visual progression in RPGs a lot, and I'm happy to say that Gothic still holds up when it comes to this. No matter which faction you choose to play with, you're getting some cool looking armors. You start off with a basic one and then work your way through more powerful armor sets. It still gives you a great sense of visual progression, which is a very important thing in an RPG, in my opinion. To sum up the visuals, they are certainly outdated, but I try to explain why I think that doesn't matter a lot. This will depend on your taste of course, and once again, if you're on PC, you can install some great graphical mods which will substantially improve the visuals. This is supposed to be one of the biggest strengths of the remake. I think the remake looks great so far, but some fans won't agree. But I think all remakes have the same problem when it comes to the updated visuals, art direction, or however you wanna call it. I think it's borderline impossible to replicate the same artistic style of the original game when you're doing a remake. So what is Gothic all about, you may ask, if you never got to play the game?
The war against the orcs took its toll, and the prisoners of the realm were to pay the price.
Humans are fighting a losing war against the orcs, and in order to fight back, the king made a desperate decision. He forces a bunch of convicts to mine magical ore in the mining colony in order to create more powerful weapons and armor. The king orders 12 most powerful magicians to create a magical barrier over the mining colony to prevent convicts from escaping. However, the barrier grows large enough to cover the entire valley, trapping everyone inside, including the mages. The prisoners use this opportunity to kill the guards and take the control over the colony, and they also separated into 3 different groups. The Old Camp, New Camp, and the Brotherhood, also known as the Sect Camp. The king made a deal with the convicts. He will get the steady supply of magical ore in exchange for trading goods. But not all camps are willing to trade their ore, especially not the New Camp. Most of the people from these camps have different ideas about escaping the barrier and different methods of doing so. The New Camp is gathering enough ore so they can blow up the barrier and finally escape, while the Brotherhood is praying to a god called the Sleeper, which is supposed to help them escape this place. In reality, the people from the Brotherhood just smoke weed all day and make silly sounds, and the people from the Old Camp have a superiority complex.
You don't talk much, do you?
Nope.
Only a handful of people from these camps are actually serious about escaping this place, especially the New Camp. That's the general gist of the setting. The story itself follows an unnamed protagonist who becomes the newest prisoner in the colony. His task is to deliver an important message to the Order of the Magicians of Fire, who are stationed in the Old Camp. However, he soon finds out that the head of the Fire Mages left the camp in order to study the forbidden black magic. More importantly, the Nameless Hero gets a lot of freedom of choice, especially in the beginning. You can join one of these 3 factions and progress through the ranks, along with finding side quests and various NPCs around the map. Easier said than done though, because the world of Gothic is very dangerous. Most people in this game are bastards who are ready to scam you the first chance they get, or even backstab you.
And if they don't, they get a good beating.
I mean, what else you expect from a bunch of convicts? Even so, the Nameless Hero will find some trustworthy people to befriend, and you have to pick a faction to join, eventually. No matter which faction you join, the main story merges into a single path. Until that happens, you'll have a lot of freedom in terms of different quests to do in all camps, meeting different NPCs, and exploring the map. Now, all of that might sound like your typical RPG stuff, and it is, if you break it down like this. However, Gothic has a very different way of telling the story and dealing with the so-called hero of the game. You are nothing in the beginning, and it's hard to even hold a weapon, let alone use it properly. No matter where you go, you're going to have a very rough time in the beginning of the game. Technically, the game allows you to wander off in any direction you want, but you'll soon find out that's not so smart. So it's best to stick with one of the camps and its vicinity until you gain some levels from doing simple quests. You can get yourself killed around every corner, but you'll usually get beat up and robbed, at least by humans. Animals will straight up rip you apart if you even dare to venture into more dangerous areas. Again, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Most of these prisoners are bad people, and they are here for a reason. Starting the game as a nobody in an RPG is not so uncommon, but Gothic takes it to another level. This gives a realistic tone to the game, which just adds to immersion. It's so refreshing to go back to this game after playing some new RPGs, which treat players like total morons. I guess this is not so uncommon today, and you can certainly find RPGs where you play as a regular guy who eventually turns into a hero. But there are only a few games that will make you feel miserable in the beginning like Gothic. That's by design though, because once you actually start getting stronger, the payoff is so much more satisfying than in your typical RPG. This can alienate a lot of new players, which is not something a lot of game studios are willing to risk. The remake might suffer from the same problem. But if you keep pushing forward and play the game, you'll realize that's how it's supposed to be. It's not even about the game's difficulty, because it's not like you can get good and just win every fight with your mechanical skills.
Therefore, I'm restricted to selling swamp weed.
It's literally impossible to even deal damage to stronger NPCs until you have proper means to do so. You have to gain levels and learn new skills and get better gear to even have a chance against most stronger NPCs. The Nameless Hero holds his one-handed weapon with two hands, and he can only attack once, until you invest some learning points into one or two-handed skill. This is far cry from most action RPGs nowadays, especially those who lean towards Souls-like style of combat and progression, where you can basically kill everyone with a starting weapon if you have the skill. In Gothic, if your character can't handle it, you won't be able to handle it. Simple as that. Getting stronger by leveling up, learning new moves and getting better gear only unlocks your potential as the character to defeat enemies in the game. It's still going to be pretty hard against stronger enemies, but you at least have a chance now. After you become pretty strong, which usually happens around the late chapter 3 or the beginning of chapter 4, it feels so rewarding. People that used to bully you around are an easy target now, as well as a lot of semi-strong and strong enemies.
No sweat. He's had enough. A fight. No sweat. You've won. You'll be sorry for that.
The game allows you to attack pretty much anyone whenever you want, which is a very bad idea at first. But later on, you can just beat up a lot of people for the sake of it, and some XP and loot of course. The knockdown system is brilliant, because you don't need to kill anyone if you don't want to, and you can still get XP or that sweet revenge. In order to actually kill someone, you need to do a killing blow to human NPCs when you actually want to kill them. Now here's a question for you, how many new RPGs will allow you to do this? Not a lot, and even when they do, they certainly don't go as deep with these mechanics like this old-ass RPG. That's one of the reasons why Gothic puts a lot of new RPGs to shame. You'll find a lot more nuances within the Gothic's interaction systems.
Shit! Run as fast as you can!
For example, if you stand in front of an NPC and they can't walk because of you, they'll politely ask you to move.
Let me pass.
They react when you pull out your weapon in crowded areas.
Put that bloody weapon away now!
Clever boy.
They will pick up your weapon, and or when you get knocked out, NPCs have a full day and night schedule and so on. Piranhabytes has put so much effort into making this little world feel alive. And here we are, 20 plus years later, and the game still feels as immersive as ever. Partly because modern RPGs started evolving when it comes to some of these interactive systems, but still. Some people might not like this game design philosophy, and that's perfectly fine, but it's important to properly understand it. Especially if you plan to jump straight into remake without prior knowledge about this series. The remake will probably have the same game design philosophy, judging by everything we have seen so far. It's yet to be seen if Alchemy is going to successfully implement all of the systems from the old game. But if they do, this will be a breath of fresh air in the RPG space. To go back to getting stronger part, the game does such a good job with constantly introducing stronger NPCs and enemies, which will give you a run for your money. So even when you start feeling much stronger, you will still have very tough enemies to beat. Gothic does a great job with enemy placement and gradually opening up parts of the map with stronger enemies. These places are not physically inaccessible, you can go there straight from the beginning of the game, but like I said before, that's a terrible idea. The only good part about it is remembering where you struggled, so you can come back later. Even when you're able to venture into these dangerous zones, like the Orc lands, it won't be a walk in the park. You will constantly feel a great sense of progression in Gothic with every level up, new armor, weapon or a spell. But before you get to that point, you'll need to familiarize yourself with a very awkward control scheme. Like I mentioned before, no matter your platform choice for this game, you'll need some time to get used to these controls. As someone who's been playing this game for many years, it comes as a second nature to me. But I still remember the first time I tried playing it on my PC and wondering who in the right mind thought that using 2 buttons for a single action is a good idea. Instead of using one button to interact with something or execute combat moves, you first need to hold the left mouse button or hold the button on a controller. Then you need to press W key or move the thumbstick on the controller in order to attack. There is a left and right swing for a weapon, and it's like a rhythmic combo that you can perform endlessly until you get hits. All combos require proper timing, you need to press the button at the end of the combo. You move the thumbstick to the side of the attack, or use A and D keys on the keyboards. This probably sounds horrible if you never played the game, and it feels horrible the first time you try it. You don't have to worry a lot about this if you're only going to play the remake, because the controls will be simplified. You might think that's a bad thing, but then again, the sequel, Gothic 2, didn't have the same controls, at least not by default. You could turn on old Gothic 1 controls in the sequel, but I never felt the need to do so. Not to mention Gothic 3, that had modern approach to controls like many other third-person RPGs. That being said, this makes the gameplay of Gothic 1 pretty unique, in a way. It's not an undercooked feature because the whole gameplay is based around multiple button inputs at once, and it works. It would be horrible if this system actually didn't work properly, but that's not the case. The controls in Gothic are made for the keyboard, and like I said before, you don't even need to use the mouse. This control scheme translates very well to the controller. You still need to use 2 buttons to do anything in this game, and no matter how weird it seems at first, trust me, it gets a lot better. Even the climbing mechanic requires you to hold the jump button until you grab the ledge, and then use the action button to pull yourself up, which feels oddly satisfying. It's almost like they try to simulate some of these moves with directional inputs. You can grab most ledges as long as you can reach them. The world of Gothic is already very vertical, so it makes sense to have this mechanic. NPCs can use it as well, although they can easily get bugged and confused easily while trying to climb ladders or ledges, and you can use that opportunity to cheese the game a little bit. Nevertheless, the control scheme in Gothic has a big barrier to entry, no pun intended, but even this part of the game increases the sense of progression, in a way. It's like learning how to ride a bike as a kid. It's annoying, a bit scary and dangerous, but once you finally do it, it feels so rewarding and you'll never forget it. That doesn't mean the control scheme in Gothic is perfect, far from it actually. Gothic can feel very stiff and janky when performing certain actions. For example, turning around with your weapon drawn is a pain in the ass, and you can easily get stun-locked and overwhelmed by many enemies. It never feels good when that happens, because you're very limited when it comes to movement in fights. Strafing around NPCs helps, but they can do the same, and it's very hard to stay in front of an enemy, especially when fighting 2 or more NPCs. Some abilities you can learn can help with this, like the acrobatics, which can give you an insane jumping ability, but it's not exactly a combat move. The melee combat can be a pain in the ass, and there is a big RNG factor, like the critical hits. You can deal massive amounts of damage to enemies with a critical hit, but the same can be done to you. Even after so many years of playing this game, I never fully mastered the melee combat system, and I think nobody did. That's because it's not meant to be mastered, and Gothic relies so much on the character strength instead of the player's skill. That doesn't mean there are no skill-based moves and tactics, they're just not as important. Swinging your weapon from left to right is usually the safest way of fighting most enemies, but it can also be a very ineffective way of dealing damage, because enemies will just back up a lot when you do this. Once you invest enough leveling up points into one of the melee playstyles, you unlock new combo attacks. The melee combat becomes much more enjoyable then, and you get brand new animations for your attacks. But once again, this is more about your character feeling more comfortable with weapons and learning how to use them. It all goes back to the immersion discussion we had before. In this particular case, the game actually feels better to play because of the newly founded skills of your character. It's a shame that some people will drop the game before they even reach this point, and that's one of my concerns about the remake as well. No matter how much better the combat feels in the remake, if at all, you had to suck in the beginning of the game. Which means no matter what you do, the combat in the beginning will kinda suck. Anyway, you also have the block button, which I don't use that much. It can be useful in one-on-one fights, but even then I just prefer to try and catch the enemy off guard with my attacks. It's also not very smart to just spam your combo attacks, even when you master one of the weapon types. You can easily get interrupted in the middle of the combo, especially against stronger NPCs like orcs. This can feel random in fights, because sometimes you'll have no issues at all, and sometimes the enemy just relentlessly spam their attacks and kill you in a couple of hits. This only includes the melee playstyle, but Gothic offers you some ranged options as well. You can use bows, crossbows and magic spells. It's highly recommended to try and play the game as a mage, but I still think it's very satisfying to play as a melee character, despite the janky controls and stiff animations. There is not much to say about the bow gameplay, because it's automatic. You just lock in and shoot, and your bow skills determines the hit chance. I think it's a brainless playstyle, but certainly very viable and very strong. Magic spells are way more interesting in the game, and I will do a mage playthrough before the remake drops. There are multiple circles of magic that you can learn from water and fire mages. The circle determines the strength of these spells, and you won't be able to cast strong spells before you learn the stronger circle. Then you get to learn these runes for casting magic, but you also need to improve your mana points. There are plenty of different spells to get in the game, and this is definitely the most fun way to play the game in general. But no matter which playstyle you decide to go with, you still need to carry some melee weapons with you. You usually have to finish off enemies with melee weapons, even as a mage or a ranger. Unless you're using some very powerful spells every once in a while. Non-mage characters can still use spell scrolls, and you'll find a bunch of them during your playthrough. However, some stronger scrolls won't allow you to cast them if you don't have enough mana. It's recommended to invest some leveling up points into mana, even if you don't want to do a full mage playthrough, just so you can freely use these scrolls. Some quests will require you to use spells like shrink a big monster so you can kill it easily, turn into a bug so you can crawl under something, pick up something with telekinesis, or just use an effective damaging spell against certain enemies. I always thought this was pretty cool. There are quests which give you a couple of different ways to complete them, and using some of these utility scrolls is usually one way to do it.
That spell of yours was real clever.
You can hear me complain about the lack of enemy variety very often in my reviews, because a lot of RPGs have this problem. It's usually the problem with the lower budget games, but not even AAA games are immune to this. Gothic has plenty of new enemies that get introduced in a very organic way. You'll find most weak enemies on the beaten path, while stronger enemies are lurking in more dangerous places. The story in Gothic is told through 6 different chapters. Each time you move to the next chapter, some enemies respawn, but you also get some brand new enemies on the map. This game has a handful of proper dungeons, but all of them are very interesting to experience. You'll find a lot of smaller caves to explore, which are usually filled with higher level enemies, and it's best to leave them for later. You can wander off in most dangerous zones in the game from the very beginning, but you don't wanna do that because you'll get destroyed. The layout of the map is done in a way to prevent you from doing this easily, even though it's basically an open world map. A small open world, but still very open. I think it's so satisfying to see some old parts of the map from some very dangerous locations, like from the Orklands. It's like, look, that used to give me so much trouble in the beginning, and now I'm here. As long as you don't leave the beaten path, you won't have a lot of problems while exploring the world, even in the beginning.
Is it dangerous?
Let me put it like this. You may as well give me all your ore before you go out there and let the orcs rip you to ribbons.
You'll fight very weak enemies that can still provide a challenge in the early game, but it's nothing compared to some strong enemies that you'll find off the beaten paths. For example, getting to the Brotherhood through the woods is much faster but way more dangerous. Gothic never loses that sense of danger in the world, which is so important if you ask me. Yet, it doesn't limit your freedom of movement and exploration completely, and if you're careful, you'll be just fine. If you talk to most NPCs, you'll even find some guides that can bring you to some of these camps, and they will just kill everything along the way. I can't stress enough how impressive the world of Gothic feels, even today after all these years. It seems so simple, yet many developers just tend to ignore these little details, which will make the world feel more alive. For example, animals will fight and eat each other, you can learn animals and make them fight human NPCs, enemies will give you a couple of warnings before they attack you, and so on. By the way, these are not heavily scripted events. These actions can be forced by the player or get triggered by the game in certain situations.
Okay, let's forget about our little argument.
Learning new skills require you to find a trainer who is willing to teach you. All camps will require you to join the faction before they allow you to learn new skills. It's not just opening up the in-game menu and selecting what you want. Again, it's all about creating a believable world. Same goes for getting new armor and weapons, especially armor sets.
I'd like to have the medium Templar's armor.
Now that you're able to make the donation, you'll be protected by new armor.
You need to progress through the ranks in one of the camps until you can buy a stronger armor set. But you can get most weapons by just looting them from certain containers, buying them from merchants, and just finding them while exploring. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it all goes back to immersion. NPC schedules take this to another level. They will go to sleep at night, work during the day, gather around some places to chill a little bit, train, smoke weed, etc. It also really helps that all NPCs are fully voice acted, even though the English voice acting is pretty bad.
But some folks would even beat you up for a pickaxe.
I'll keep it in mind.
It's mind-boggling to me how most new RPGs have bare-bones AI systems compared to this old-ass RPG. They respond to pretty much all of your actions, which make them feel like real people.
Shit! Run as fast as you can!
This game is not perfect by any means. There are a couple of boss fights which are pretty bad, to be honest, even though getting to that point is very fun. You'll get stun locked all the time by some of these enemies, which is very annoying, to say the least. But it's not like you can't easily deal with these enemies by using some utility, although that doesn't make these fights any better. They're just way too simple for today's standards, and I really wish to see some proper boss mechanics in the remake. Gothic doesn't exactly have a very good main story, it's all about the journey than the destination. The main story simply relies too much on fetching a lot of items across the map. For example, one of the main quests in Chapter 4 require you to gather enough items from very strong monsters. And the reason why this can be really fun is because you can remember struggling so much when fighting these monsters before. You'll still have some issues in these fights, but you'll be able to kill them now. It's really not that interesting from the story perspective, even though the gameplay is pretty fun. That being said, I really hope Alchema improves the storytelling in the remake, and judging by the demo, I think there is a good chance for this to happen.
I ain't got nothing for you, Greenblood, okay?
Gothic is very front-loaded when it comes to content, which means that early chapters have the most side quests and NPCs to meet. Later chapters are mostly focused on the main quest, and it feels like the game lacks side content in general. I hope Alchema improved this in the remake as well. They already promised to have some brand new side content and areas in the remake, so I guess that's pretty much confirmed. We have to mention the amazing soundtrack of Gothic as well. I think some of these tracks are going to be engraved in my brain as long as I'm alive. All Gothic games have amazing soundtracks, which makes the experience of exploring these worlds so much better. Gothic is not a perfect game by any means, but it does the most important things better than most other RPGs. It's a dark fantasy RPG with a small but very interesting open world to explore. The sense of character progression is simply amazing, where every level up gets you very excited. Piranha Bytes has put a lot of effort into making it as immersive as possible, and even after all of these years, it still feels more immersive than much better looking games. On the surface level it looks very outdated, but once you forget about the blocky characters and blurry textures and you get used to the weird controls, you're in for an unforgettable RPG experience.
Don't hang around here, do something!
I can't be more excited for the remake, and I hope Alkima manages to deliver a great game. Anyway, you can expect me to make videos about the remake of course, so stick around for that. I absolutely think you should give this game a chance at least before the remake comes out, and if the remake turns out to be great, you'll appreciate it a lot more if you played the original game first. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.